So when I started my first business, I made $100,000 in 2 weeks, and I got one massive learning from that I want to share with you guys. The backstory here is I'm 27 years old. I've had a job in the public sector for a few years after having ditched my first career, which was I was going to be a university philosopher. And then I had gotten a job in management consulting. So went to a new city and started as a management consultant and had that job. And then by chance, I met up with an uncle I didn't see a lot that was from the city that I moved to. And he essentially said, hey, I have this real estate conference company that, that you might want to take over. And, being young, I had no idea what that really meant. But what it really meant was that he had gone bankrupt with it. And it was now being processed by lawyers. But he didn't want to let it go. So he essentially was like tricking me into sort of taking over the failed conference company and tried to sort of reinvigorate it and buy it back from the lawyers, from the estate. I said yes, because I thought it was exciting and, we could just get going with this. And this was back in 2009. So the financial crisis had just hit, which was what had made him go bankrupt, because all of the real estate conferences that he had planned had suddenly, failed because nobody wanted to hear about whatever topics were on, so everybody was not buying. And a conference business is a very cash flow positive business. So you essentially, you put out a program, then people sign up and pay you, and then 4, 5, 6 months later, they show up for an event and expecting there to be an event, and then that's it. So you get the month, 6 months in events, you get the cash. That's what happened from him. He had gotten all the cash, he'd spent it. And then, suddenly sales had plummeted. He didn't have any new cash coming in to actually have the events. So he had just done a total mic drop and just left the business, like not paid salary to the employees, not had any events, like burned all his vendors with hotels and venues that had these conferences on and so forth. And I didn't know any of this. So I just came in and said, okay, let's do this business. And he said, he was actually quite commercially smart. So he knew what people wanted now in the market. So he said, well, what people want to do is that they have distressed real estate companies. So they want to know how to save distressed real estate companies. So we are going to create a conference called How to Save Distressed Real Estate Companies. Because he had done a total mic drop of the business, we actually couldn't get access to the business. Like, we couldn't get access to the back end of the website. We couldn't get access to sort of everything inside of the business. And again, I didn't know this at the time, but he essentially found like a back door where we could get access to the email list. And then he was like, this is going to be fine. We're just going to write the conference program. And he essentially just wrote it. I remember it because it was like in a Times New Roman, like TXT based email. So he's like, there was a little form and they just said, we're going to write a conference program on how to save distressed real estate companies. And my question was, okay, but who's going to speak at the event? And he's like, doesn't matter. We'll figure that out later. What we need to show people right now is that we're going to solve their problem. So he just wrote out a conference program with like 6 different topics, like, the state of the economy for distressed real estate companies, managing liquidity in times of crisis, getting its sort of real estate companies back from the lawyers, refinancing, different topics. And then he had access to the email list again, which was maybe around 3,000 real estate professionals in Scandinavia, where I'm from. And because we didn't have access to any of the, like, say, fancy stuff inside of the actual system, we actually had to like create a really ugly like blog web page somewhere where we couldn't create hyperlinks in the email. So he just has to say, well, you need to go to this link, and then he would just like write out the entire link, like the URL, and then people had to like copy paste it from the email, go to a browser, like put it in, go to the website, and then there would be like a little checkout form where we could then like send them an invoice. So it was like a super like non-fancy email, like no images, not even any formatting, no clickable links. There was like a call to action. It was like sign up here, and then they had to copy paste the thing, go to a super ugly web address. I think it was even sent from like my private email, like my Gmail account at the time. And we sent it out. And then I remember it because we sent it out in the morning, and I went to work at the management consultancy, and I checked my inbox, and it was just like filled with sign-up emails. And they were paying something like 500 emails a piece. And it's just like dozens of them, right? Just like scrolling through. I was like, wow, like for every email, I'm making $500. And I knew that we could make the entire venue and the cost of the venue for maybe like $100. So it was like for every one of these, like there's $400 in profit. And they just kept pouring in, right? So in the first 2 weeks or so, we got, I think, a couple of hundred signups per $500. So it's like 100 signups is like 50K. So 200 signups is like 100K. And I think we ran like 2 or 3 conferences. So because whenever you have one topic, you just like make a slight iteration of that, and you say, hey, how to handle distressed real estate companies if you're a bank. And then we marketed that, and then all the banks were signed up to that again. So one thing is the adrenaline rush. So I never forgot that sort of sense of suddenly being like super excited and feeling that it was a secret because I was at work and I wasn't supposed to work on my startup, essentially. But I was like checking my email on my phone and getting all this business in. And then the lesson was that I always remember that whenever you're starting something, having that like very clear product market fit where you just have demand immediately for your thing is way more important than having all the small details in place, right? Ugly website, like horrible flow in terms of like no clickable links. We sent them like, I think even like a PDF invoice that they had to sort of pay manually with a bank transfer, so no credit card and so forth, right? All of the flow and funnel things were super low tech and awful. And so I would spend the next 3 or 4 or 5 years optimizing this business. I think at the end I was in the UK, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, so 4 countries, and we would do more than 300 events a year. And that was sort of the business. So, and of course, all these things mattered when I had to grow the business and, you know, hire people and streamline it and do it sort of at least a little bit of scale. But at the initial onset of just running this, it was just realizing that, oh, people want it, and they want it despite the awful funnel that we set up. So yeah, that's how I ended up quitting the consultancy job. I had like a 10-week, 12-week trial period. So I went in like week 10 and say, I can't do this. I have like my bank account is overflowing with cash, and I'm dealing with customer requests, and I have, you know, something better to do with my time. So I quit the job. So I was a consultant for like a couple of months. That's the story. And again, I think the takeaway is like, to some degree, if you build a better mousetrap and you just tell people the path, they'll figure out how to beat it if you have those 2 in place. Okay, take care.